Welcome to the Best of Villain series, where we talk about the best villains that Shonen has to offer. This time, we are talking about the most conniving and dastardly villain in the Yugioh manga, Bakura. Specifically, the evil spirit that inhabits the Millennium Ring, known as Yami Bakura. You see, Bakura is actually a classmate of Yugi's and a friend and ally to him. It is only thanks to the Millennium Ring, in which Bakura has the possession of, that takes possession of Bakura and attempts to fight the Pharaoh time and time again, all for the sake of reviving its true power and identity in the god of the underworld, Zork Necrophades. Yami Bakura is a slimy creature who always has a secondary motive. To truly understand Yami Bakura, however, we first have to understand his backstory and what turned him into what he is. 3,015 years ago, Pharaoh Akhenaten and his forces were being pressed back from the foreign invaders who were after an ancient artifact known as the Millennium Tome, which has the abilities to cast spells to summon creatures to fight against armies. His brother, Akhenaten, reports that the translation of said tome, after 100 years, is finally finished, which talks about creating 7 sacred treasures that come to be known as the Millennium Items, and it will take 7 days for the treasures to be created. What the pharaoh did not know at the time, however, was that to create the 7 items, sacrifices must be made in 99 lives. Akhenaten raids the village of Kul Elna, village known as the Village of Thieves, and by turning the human sacrifices into gold, the 7 items were created, with the base being something known as the Sacred Tablet. Due to the tablet being wreaked in all of those souls, it gained the power to get access to the god of the underworld, Zork Necrophades. One young kid by the name of Bakura was a survivor of that incident and swore his revenge against the pharaoh and his fellow priests. 15 years later, Bakura shows up at the royal temple after raiding the now deceased Akhenaten's tomb and robs his riches alongside the corpse of the previous pharaoh. Our protagonist and the current pharaoh at the time, Atem, unleashes his rage against Bakura as Bakura attempts to fight against the priests with his spirit monster, or his Ka, and Atem summons the obelisk the Tormentor against Bakura's great Diabound and forces Bakura to leave. Afterwards, Priest Mahado, wielder of the Millennium Ring, offers to guard the previous pharaoh's tomb with expectation that Bakura will attempt to raid it again. Bakura does indeed lie in wait, and the two lure each other out and end up being sealed in the pharaoh's tomb, with Bakura's true intention to receive the Millennium Ring. The two clash, and despite being rather skilled, Bakura gets the upper hand on Mahado, causing his death. But before then, as an ancient magic wielder, Mahado was able to cast a spell that allowed his spirit to live on to protect the pharaoh by fusing him with his own spirit Ka in the Magus of Illusion, turning him into the Dark Magician. However, due to this, Bakura succeeded in getting the Millennium Ring and also evolved his Diabound as it gains the moves of those it fought, as well as the ability to turn invisible. Bakura then confronts Akhenaten, the one behind the Kul Elna incident, as well as the wielder of the Millennium Eye. Bakura easily overpowers the priests and lays some of his own magic in the eye, corrupting Akhenaten, which forces the pharaoh and the priests to attack Bakura, with Atem leading the charge with Osiris or Slifer the Sky Dragon. The two fight through the city, and Atem eventually uses Slifer as a decoy to locate Diabound, for the remaining priests to launch their attack. However, this does cause Slifer to be an easy target and gets attacked, causing the pharaoh to sustain a lot of damage. The priest Akhenaten ends up being corrupted and turned into the High Priest of Shadows, Necrophades, where he eventually gathers all of the Millennium items and places them in the slab. He makes a contract with Zork Necrophades and had his physical appearance altered. He then conquers the palace, gathers a large army of monsters alongside all of those who died in the Kul Elna incident, and sends an assault against the pharaoh. In a last-ditch effort, the pharaoh chooses to use the powers of the Millennium Puzzle to seal both his soul and the soul of Zork Necrophates with him in the puzzle, alongside both of their memories. The puzzle would then break, and both would be lost for 3,000 years, until the modern day when one Yugioh rebuilds the puzzle. Zork had a sealed part of his magic in the Millennium Ring, but he could not truly awaken into the Yami Bakura that we know in the story until Yugi built the puzzle. And Ryo Bakura, who got the ring from his father, transferred to Yugi's school, and the two interacted. So technically, the soul in the Millennium Ring that we know from most of the series is a fusion of Bandit Thief Bakura, the priest Akhenaten, and then Zork Necrophates, as the Bandit Thief merged with the priest and corrupted him to unlock the power of Zork, and become the High Priest of Shadows, and subsequently became sealed in the ring until modern day. Yami Bakura is the true antithesis of the Pharaoh, the two of them being the only two that were carried throughout the course of 3,000 years, destined to lock in a battle of fate adapted to modern times. He set up the long game with the two only going face to face in some form of games 3 times, each one conveyed in a part of the trilogy. You see, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually split up into 3 different parts. You have the first part where it was focused on games, the second part where it's focused on the card game Duel Monsters, and the third part focusing on the battle in ancient Egypt through the Millennium World. The 3 fights, each separated, goes as follows. One where he forced Yugi and his friends into a tabletop RPG called Monster World. 2 when he fights Yugi in Battle City in the quarterfinals, and 3 in the Memory Millennium World arc at the end of the series. Both the first and the third games are quite similar to one another, as they both have the two faced off as masters, fighting using their comrades' souls to fight in a game of strategic tabletop RPG. The first and third fights both show off Yami Bakura's true identity as Zork, and the first fight shows the final boss of the entire series rather early on. The second bout between the two is in the quarterfinals of Battle City. It focuses on a 2-way pincer attack by Yami Bakura to defeat the Pharaoh, by setting up an instant win combo through Destiny Board, a card that assembles cards to spell the word death, with a letter being added each turn, alongside the effect of the Dark Necrophere to send out its vengeful spirit to inflict damage to the Pharaoh's monsters and his life points. The Pharaoh was able to bypass this combo through reviving Yami Bakura's Dark Necrophere, which was the progenitor of both win conditions, and by removing it from the graveyard, it nullified both effects. This fight actually hints at one of Zork's abilities in their third fight, as Yami Bakura uses a card called Deja Vu, a card that resets Yami Bakura's combo to his advantage. A similar thing happens when Zork used his powers to rewind time and stop the descent of the Winged Dragon of Ra in the Millennium World. The second bout between the two ends with Yami Bakura initially using Ryo Bakura as a hostage, but abandons the idea on the principle of pride. Yami Bakura does have another duel where he goes not against the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh's vessel in Yugimoto, as a roadblock to prevent Yugi from learning the Pharaoh's name, which holds the power to defeat Zork. That duel, Yami Bakura duels using a different deck that focuses on the destruction of the deck through the amount of cards in the graveyard, while also getting rid of his own graveyard. This symbolizes the tragic past of the souls used in the village of the Cool Elna incident to create the Millennium items. There is actually one more duel that Yami Bakura takes a part in, and that is against Yami Merrick. At the time, Merrick Ishtar lost his own body to his evil personality, known as Yami Merrick, and so his spirit teamed up with Yami Bakura that agreed to stop Yami Merrick in exchange for the Millennium Rod. The two duel, and Yami Bakura's main strategy is to add the Winged Dragon of Ra to Yami Merrick's hand and then send it to the graveyard. Since the original Merrick is working with Yami Bakura knows the effect of requiring tributes for Ra to gain attack. Since Monster Reborn is a card that everyone plays, even if Ra was revived, his attack would be 0. The issue is that the original Merrick didn't know of Ra's secret effect, to where Yami Merrick could merge with Ra to give it attack. This duel is extra entertaining as the two duelists are our two antagonists of the series. However, it also goes to show the threat level of Yami Merrick that Zork himself deemed to get rid of Yami Merrick, which also helps build the stakes of Battle City. The Pharaoh and Yami Bakura both mirror one another. They are the only two souls from the past that possess someone in the present day, with their two hosts in Ryo Bakura and Yugimoto seemingly being reincarnations, as not only do their appearance match one another, but also the fact that both are mentioned to be the perfect situation for each respective spirit. Up until the Millennium World arc at the very end of the manga, both the Pharaoh and Yami Bakura have the same role. Both characters inhabit the bodies of two teenage boys through the power of an ancient artifact that are somehow linked to one another, and they each are on a path to finding out the key to the mystery between these two, and eventually both come to the same conclusion that they need the Pharaoh's memories. The Pharaoh actually wanting the memories itself, and Bakura so he can awaken Zork. These two souls are also the main ones that fight. Ryo Bakura never duels in the manga, only Yami Bakura does. Yugimoto does have screen time as being the main character, but most of the duels are with the Pharaoh, not with Yugi. The diverging point for these two ancient souls was unironically during their first encounter in combat with one another, with Yami Bakura taking hostage of all of Yugimoto's friends in the game Monster World, and as the last remaining player whose soul was not yet taken, Yugi volunteers to get his soul taken by the game and transferred into a miniature. Yami Bakura does so happily, but questions who would be the other person to play because otherwise they would lose without a player. Yugi then is able to leave his body in the hands of the Pharaoh, with them both acknowledging that this is the first time that they are truly meeting. By making this connection with one another, they were able to work together as a team rather than have the Pharaoh operate on his own. Ryo Bakura actually actively works against Yami Bakura during the Monster World game. He took control of a part of his body and messed up Yami Bakura, and eventually became a character in the game to fight against the forces of Zork. Not that I think that Ryo Bakura would ever work with the heinous acts of Yami Bakura, but I do think that if Yami Bakura was able to sway him or trick him into helping and teaming up together, then they might have actually succeeded against the Pharaoh. Yami Bakura is just Zork. He actually has no other allies aside from those that he manipulates, and Merrick, who had common interests at the time. The Thief King Bakura himself had no allies either, which is why he called on Zork, but at the present day he himself is Zork and chooses to get no allies. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh is able to pull through time and time again, including being able to summon the Winged Dragon of Ra in the most pivotal moment against the Thief King Bakura in the Millennium World arc, specifically because he had the power of his friends backing him. Bakura is a manifestation of the dark past regarding the Millennium items. Due to their creation, Bakura suffered so much that it caused him to think of nothing but suffering towards those that have wronged him and his village. He would go so far as to summon the power of the god of the underworld and summon his power to rain upon down the citizens of Egypt. Violence breeds more violence, and this is a prime example of that. Bakura, of course, wants revenge for what happened to his village. Even if the Pharaoh did not know of the sacrifices required, he and the priests are still at fault for what happened to Kul Elna. It is an unfortunate consequence of the desire of power. While it's obvious that what Bakura is doing is wrong, his rage is at the very least not unjustified. To Bakura, the Millennium items belong to him, as his family and friends were the ingredients for their creation. By creating the items in the first place, the priests had created their own worst enemy, which is rather ironic as they were created with the idea to protect Egypt from invading forces. Like every Millennium item user, every item represents its wielder and vice versa. For the Millennium Ring, its main ability is a dowsing rod for finding the other Millennium items. This is rather ironic as it points to the other's demise to the wielders, as Yami Bakura is a collector of the Millennium items. The other strong piece of irony is that Yami Bakura himself is a wandering lost soul. So for the main ability to help find things when he himself, for most of the series, does not know where he's supposed to be is rather ironic. It also has the ability to infuse objects with a part of its owner's soul, which is what he does to Priest Akhenaten, infusing to eventually become Zork Necrophates. Yami Bakura is known as the collector of the Millennium items, and we see him do this in the past and the present. In the present, he ends up collecting the Millennium Eye by killing Pegasus, which is also the Millennium item that he used to corrupt Priest Akhenaten in the past. He also works with Merrick in hopes of getting the Millennium Rod as payment. Yami Bakura ends up protecting Yugi and making sure that the Millennium items and God cards are not stolen, and even offers Yugi his items when the time comes to unlock the Pharaoh's memories as well. He does this as a way to use both the kid and the Pharaoh to achieve his own goals. In the past, we see the Bandit King of Thieves successfully manage to acquire the ring from killing Mahado and the puzzle from the Pharaoh. He is also able to, supposedly, according to Zork, work with Priest Akhenaten to obtain the necklace, the rod, the scales, and the key so that he can awaken Zork Necrophates. Now, with a series that is focused primarily on card games, and with the story being told through that, the cards that each person uses symbolize them in some way. For Yami Bakura, he uses primarily a deck comprised of fiend and zombie monsters, cards that manipulate the graveyard, showing that even after death, they still will torment those that affected them, with them primarily being known for Dark Necrofear, a card that releases a vengeful spirit after it is destroyed, while also access to ensure destruction in the Destiny board. To ensure his victory while his combos are in play, he uses stall cards like the Dark Door and the Narrow Corridor, which prevents multiple attacks, and if that does not work, he can always use his All-Killing Death card that destroys his opponent's deck. He sets up a surefire victory against his opponents to make sure that they do not have a hope of winning. Despite Yami Bakura himself not having a single win in the original run of the manga, it would be hard for anyone to argue and say that his presence in each and every one of those duels was felt, and there was no guaranteed victory against him. Whether it was against the Pharaoh, Yugi, or Merrick, Bakura always had a more than solid chance in winning the duel, and the only 3 people that he dueled on screen also happened to be arguably the 3 best duelists in the original run. Something that is not a part of his deck, but is the representation of him during the Millennium World arc, or rather the representation of the Bandit King of Thieves Bakura, is Diabound. Diabound is the spirit Ka of the Thief King, and he gains the powers of those that he faces, much akin to a thief. As the monster represents the King of Thieves, I'd say it does so quite well, as it ends up taking the powers of the Magus of Illusion and Slifer the Sky Dragon. He also has the powers to phase through stone and turning invisible. He also grows stronger with Bakura's hatred growing more and more. On top of that, it is stated to be a god-type Ka by Bakura. That never gets denied in the series, and those around him seem to believe it, so I'm going to go off the assumption that it is. Priest Siamon does state that no god-type Ka could exist in an evil heart, but Bakura refutes, stating that their definition of evil is not what evil is based off of. Bakura having a god-type Ka represents his form of justice and desire for his own goals. Despite his end result is to rule the world with using the Millennium items, his drive was born out of the suffering of losing his village, which can rival the pharaoh's own form of justice, as they themselves were the one that caused it. Finally, I could not make a video on Yami Bakura and not talk about his relationship with his host, Ryo Bakura. Ryo Bakura does not get a whole lot of screen time, and for a majority of the series, he is brainwashed to not remember the events of what is occurring, and seemingly doesn't understand that Yami Bakura is still in the Millennium Ring, and did not go away. The two don't interact except for Monster World, while the two are fighting for the control of the body. Ryo Bakura and Yami Bakura are antagonistic towards one another, at least when Ryo was able to fight back. But before Yami Bakura succeeded in brainwashing Ryo, the two fought against one another, which, as mentioned earlier, is the opposite of the pharaoh's relationship with Yugioh, and ultimately leads to Yami Bakura's downfall. I do wish that we saw more between the two, if anything, Ryo fighting back, but the only time he'd be able to do something like that after Monster World would be in Battle City, but instead the plot had him get brainwashed by two people, which turned him into a damsel in distress, and during the Millennium World arc, he gets instantly possessed and is rarely seen aside from running away in tears for having evil in his heart, and Yami Bakura had the body for the rest of the arc. Both Ryo Bakura and Yami Bakura as one is one of, if not the most interesting and entertaining characters to watch in Yu-Gi-Oh! You never know what is going to happen, and that unpredictability on the outcome is what makes it interesting and constantly fresh for a series that you would think you would know the outcome of. I also enjoy the complexity of how Yami Bakura's current rendition in the present came to be, as he is a fusion of the bandit thief Bakura's soul and priest Akhenaten with the powers of Zork Necrophades. I always thought that was rather neat. I also wanted to say thank you all who recommended this video on my Merrick video, and thank you so much for the support regarding that video as well. It truly does mean the world to me. But that's all I got. If you like what you heard, consider subscribing and liking. It would mean a lot. Other than that, I'm out of here. Okay, bye.